Okay, let's talk melatonin. This is a big one. People really jump on the melatonin train when they want to go to sleep and use it kind of like a medication. But let's back into this a little bit, and what you're looking at is the biochemistry behind it. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that everybody dig into biochemistry, but let me break this down for you a little bit here. It starts with tryptophan. Now, everybody recognizes or correlates tryptophan to turkey. You eat turkey, it makes you tired. Why? Because of the tryptophan, right? Well, there's a few more steps involved there, and again, this is just the very simplified version of it. But tryptophan goes through a few steps in order to become melatonin, you'll notice down here at the bottom. And so you've got the name here and just kind of the biochemical makeup of it over there on the left. Tryptophan gets changed into 5-HTP for short, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan. That gets changed into serotonin. Serotonin is that what makes you feel good, right? When your serotonin is low, you're depressed. So tryptophan in the turkey changed into serotonin, which we like, makes us feel good. Serotonin goes through a few more steps and gets converted into melatonin. Now, remember, melatonin does a ton of things for us, but when it comes to sleep in particular, it's vital because it helps you turn off things like your adrenals. And remember, our goal is not to go to sleep, it's to not be awake. And so melatonin helps turn off those adrenals, which are one of the main things that keeps us awake. So remember that melatonin production in general is dictated by your suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN, which is your master clock in the body. And the sun going up, for example, will trigger your master clock to lower melatonin production. The sun going down will signal nighttime and trigger your master clock to increase melatonin production. Now, a couple things there, interestingly enough, about melatonin. On a normal night, your body will produce about 300 micrograms of melatonin. And that's really all you need for your body to kind of turn everything off. Now, most people, when they take melatonin, are going to be dosing way above that. And so they're really flooding their system. If you take a milligram or a gram or whatever it is, I mean, 1 milligram, that's 3 times the normal amount. And yeah, that might help you fall asleep, but unfortunately, what will happen is kind of a negative feedback in the body. So if you can imagine, if you're supplying your body with tons of this melatonin, it essentially will shut down its own natural production because it's already got plenty of it. You'll also develop kind of a tolerance to where you're flooding your body with that melatonin, and in the future, you'll be less sensitive to it. A couple things to understand. So again, I know I've kind of mentioned this, but it's extremely important then to get a good amount of midday sunlight, not just to sync all your clocks, in particular your master clock, but to really help boost your melatonin. So you can do a lot better in a natural way to, let me rephrase that. You can, rather than supplement the melatonin, you can boost it naturally in a much more effective way. Daytime sunlight exposure will increase your melatonin production about 50%. So just getting outside into daylight with your eyes open and letting your body soak up all that light and synchronize everything will increase your nighttime melatonin production by 50%. That's huge, and it doesn't cost you anything. Now, normally you should be outside about 6 hours, but that's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, for most people. The good news is that 80% of the benefits you get from being outside for 6 hours happen within the first 30 minutes or so. Now, 30 minutes of daytime exposure, sunlight exposure, is much more doable. So, that's something you can do on your lunch break. You can get outside, get some sunlight, great for, producing vitamin D and getting a nice tan, but also that melatonin production. A couple other things a couple things that you need to understand about this whole process. Each of these steps requires things to happen, right? So it's like a recipe and there's ingredients. In particular, between excuse me, in particular between tryptophan and, I'm sorry, 5-hydroxytryptophan and serotonin. You require a couple of very important things that people tend to be very deficient in, like vitamin D, which we mentioned you get from the sunlight, and magnesium. Really, anything in the body that requires vitamin D also is going to require magnesium. But again, you get vitamin D from sunlight. You synthesize that. It's actually a hormone, not a vitamin. And magnesium you're typically going to get from leafy green vegetables. So that magnesium is in the chlorophyll molecule. That's what makes everything green. And so we've got a situation where people aren't getting outside. They don't eat any vegetables, and so we're deficient in both of those. And just understand that if you don't have the ingredients for the recipe, you do not finish that end product. And so 5-HTP to get converted into serotonin here requires vitamin D and magnesium. If you're deficient, you're going to have a big holdup right here, and that means this whole cascade of events is affected and doesn't get you all the way down to that melatonin there, which you need to get to sleep. Of course, sleep deprivation is going to lower your melatonin, and that's pretty obvious as well. So that is your melatonin production. What it also means is that one of the big things that people miss when it comes to getting good sleep, they'll just go try and take a sleep medication, or they'll really take a high dose of melatonin. You're going to be much better off if you can get that daytime sunlight exposure. Remember, 30 minutes is where you get 80% of the benefits. You make sure your vitamin D levels are sufficient. You can actually test those fairly easily. And make sure you are getting plenty of magnesium. Most people are very deficient, and that's not just through your diet, but most people, myself included, are going to need to supplement that. But yeah, that's your biochemistry lesson 101 for sleep, melatonin production. Yes, and we love that for sleep.